This is Freeze, and you're watching Thorin season, and I would have been better than forgiven if I wouldn't get injured.
Right, this is going to be another episode of Reflections, and my guest for this one is going to be Abbedagge, who is obviously a German mid laner, currently teamless, which we'll get to at the end of the interview, but obviously most famously played for teams like Schalke, 100 Thieves. Maybe you saw him in Excel last year. So I did that like to commercial, like, you know, also check out the website for more details and 10% off your own Abbedagge, which by the way, technically, actually this is a commercial at the end of this. Maybe you want to hire him to play mid lane in the LEC. He is available, speaks English and German. He can even speak American, so it's got the total package. No, Abbedagge, let's start out here, right? Which is when I went back and I looked up some of your old career. One of the things I always find cool is when most people have some pro players or LEC level players currently that they all played with back when they were like amateurs or semi-pros or coming up. Almost everyone does because there's just so many people. And I saw obviously one of the notable ones for you was obviously Broken Blade. Obviously the guy everyone knows from G2. You play with him way back. Who was the Broken Blade of 2016? We're going all the way back there. People know him now. He's got this like sick personality, you know, the top father and all that. He's kind of built his brand. It's kind of cool. Who was he back in 2016 though? Who was this guy?
Yeah, definitely a really sick transformation from BB from back then all the way to now. Back then he was pretty shy still. He was a shy person, and
hard to believe. Okay.
It was still hard for him. Maybe that like he had this image of a Riven one trick. Like people said, like, this guy is only good at this champ, and like he can't play anything else. But yeah, he was already like you could definitely see how mechanically talented he was. But back then he wasn't as, let's say, strategically advanced as he is nowadays. He would win through mechanics, or he wouldn't really win, you know, if there was too much.
If his name is Broken Blade, mate, and he plays Riven, it sounds like if everyone knows Schalke, is he just the guy that he just wins top, but he doesn't group a year, he just tries to like snowball the game? Was he like a solo queue Phenom back then? Was he that type of player?
Yeah, I would say he was kind of just like push my lane, like
sure.
he was gonna like win his lane pretty hard and keep pushing top, but he wouldn't really transfer the advantage. Right. Maybe.
Sure.
Yeah.
What about who was Abbedagge then? Because people think they know you when you come in the LEC, but this is even a few years before that. So who were you at this time when you were coming into these teams? Like, who were you as a person? Who were you as a player?
Oh, I was very shy back then. I think I wouldn't really talk much. Like, I don't actually remember much, but when people meet me nowadays that I've known from back then they say, "Oh my God, you've changed so much, and you actually like talk now." So back then I was very shy, but I was just a kid enjoying the game. I was very much just like still learning the game. I had like idols such as Faker and Bjergsen back then. Actually,
all right.
I would just look up and kind of try to copy their playstyle, which I think it worked pretty well for me back then.
By the way, when you say that, it's funny because I've always thought the weird thing about esports is we make it sound like it's sports, and we often make the stars seem as if they're like sports stars. But if you know, obviously the main difference is sports stars kind of are like jocks, like American, like they're more sort of like outgoing people. It's more of a physical world, obviously. Whereas I often think like most people in pros and esports, we're all nerds. Like a lot of people are shy, a lot of people are a bit awkward, you know. So one thing I wondered is, I know, like I would even say this, believe it or not, I didn't used to be such an outgoing person. I used to just be a little nerd researching stuff and doing stuff behind the camera. And what I'll tell you is, back then, I actually think, in a way, doing like nerdy esports stuff was almost like my way to get confidence in a way. It's like something I'm good at. So if I do that, that's like sort of what allows me to feel like good, or feel like, oh, I'm leveling up, or I'm good at something in the world. Did you have something similar? Was your identity tied to being good at League, do you think?
I would say definitely that it was surprising for me when people started coming up and wanting interviews. Like once I started getting into these, like the Turkish league, for example, that's when you start doing interviews, and it's like it's weird that people start wanting to know things about your life.
Sure.
And then, yeah, I definitely had to get a lot more out of myself and open up more to people.
So, okay, as you say, obviously, if people don't know, People always get this wrong, Abbedagge. What I noticed they do is this. Because when your like class of mid laner came in the LEC, you had Humanoid, came from the RLs. You had Nemesis, came from the RLs. Everyone goes, they all came from the RLs, whereas actually Abbedagge came from the TCL. He came from the Turkish league, as we're talking about, which crucially back then, even though the RLs were starting to get going, TCL, as far as I know, was like way more of sort of like, more like a top tier level. Like I've heard all these amazing stories about when you go to the live events, mate, and they're like, it's kind of like what people are talking about now. We're like Carbon Cup, you go, there'll be like a stadium full of people, like a soccer atmosphere with like flares and people go crazy with banners and stuff. What was it like to play in this league? It's by the way, if you're someone kind of shy, just go at the game. It sounds like in a way there might be a challenge to that. It might be a bit intimidating, maybe to have this crazy atmosphere. What was it like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely like crazy. It was my first experience in a big stadium. To be fair, I only played one finals when I was in Turkey, but yeah, we played in this huge basketball stadium with like 16,000 people or something, and I think most of them were cheering for Supermassive because they were
the other
like,
team, right?
they were like the favorite team of Turkey back then.
And were they all telling you stuff like we're gonna kill you and stuff? Were they all doing crazy shit? Were they shouting crazy shit?
No, to be honest, it was pretty comparable to like European or North American
right,
events.
that's cool then. Okay.
They were cool. They were cool, yeah.
Right, okay. By the way, when you're in that, this is one thing I always wondered about, right? We're going to obviously get into it later because it's a famous like, conception about you. But one of the reasons why I've always found that whole thing of like people are chokers and people put that crazy label on them is there's levels of competition. Like at this level, mate, you were doing great. You were obviously like one of the best players in the TCL. If you go to a stage match in TCL, you're not choking or suddenly can't play league, right? Like, what would you say to that? Like, in a way, this gave you some like stage experience and stuff, right?
I mean, sometimes it helped me remind me, like, because, you know, everyone reads these comments sometimes, and then they label you as a joker, and then you think back and you were like, mate, like, when I was 17, I played in a basketball stadium with 16k people, and I did pretty well, I would say. So, you know, there gotta be something wrong about this, and, you know, that can't be true.
Yes.
I'm not gonna joke, and I'm gonna be able to play with confidence.
Because this is a topic I want to talk about, but I actually want to talk about it like this, mate. I want to talk about kind of like unpack it and see what you think. Because, like I said, the problem with that term is, if you notice, the term choker is also like, there's a concept we have in English called like an umbrella term. They basically put that one word in, it can mean about 15 different things. Like, to me, if you actually say like, what is a choker? I would say it's this, Abbedagge. I'd say it's when you're like maybe like a favourite or like you're in a position to win, and then you actually do get so much like nerves or whatever, you just completely can't play. You mess up the game. Basically, mainly you throw the game, not as much as the other team wins. You know, you just throw it completely. You know, everyone's had games. Everyone knows when that happens, right? The problem I have is I notice they also apply it to people where, for example, that's maybe not what's happening. Maybe they just play out. Like my example would be like, you know, Chovy. You know, every time he goes to Worlds, everyone goes, "Oh, he choked it." So if you ever watch him, like if you're a mid laner, he didn't choke, guys. Like he just didn't play like 10 out of 10 level and carry the whole game. Most of the times he played like pretty good or just all right, and it's more like he just couldn't get to his 10 out of 10 level, if you know what I mean. So in your case, one of the reasons why actually I think this story emerged, Abbedagge, is people heard this story of like, this guy's really good in scrims, and then it's just that when you were rookie in LEC, you just weren't doing that in the games. Like, to me, if I went back and watched the games, I don't think I'd see you making like crazy ints or like just dying for no reason with flash up at level 3, right? Like, I'm not really going to see like you hardcore choking. I'd say it's more like maybe you had difficulty acclimatizing to being in LEC. Apparently in scrims you were awesome, right?
I mean, yeah, I would say that I've definitely had moments where like I could feel my nerves and they were like stopping me from playing well. That has happened, and I think it happened to everyone. It's just how you adapt and how you take it the next time. And I think over the time I got used to the stage like really well. But I would just say that back then, like it was my first year, and I think I wasn't quite at the LEC level or like top level yet. So obviously it just kind of transferred, and then in scrims you play a bit more loose, like games are more chaotic, you just win through mechanics and not as much like maybe the thinking aspects, where it's like more calm on stage. And I think, yeah, all of that contributed a lot to that narrative.
Because one thing I always noticed in your teams, mate, is obviously I can message people behind the scenes. I don't just have to ask them on shows. And not only publicly did I ask them about you, but privately when I asked like teammates and coaches in this Schalke team, a lot of them told, this is how I knew you must be good in scrims. They all told me like, oh, don't worry, like you'll get past it. Like, yeah, we all support him. Like it actually sounded like they didn't think it was a big problem, mate. It sounded like they were pretty supportive in Schalke. Would you agree?
I mean, I think definitely the whole org, everyone was part of. I mean, yeah, like there were we had some times of struggles in Schalke. For example, like famously 2020.
Sure.
The forgiven roster, and then the whole roster changes throughout the whole year. But our coaching staff and the management always stayed behind us. They supported us throughout the whole of it.
By the way, on the whole thing of like the difference between scrims and playing in LEC, I also feel like a casual fan probably doesn't know that like almost everyone, maybe there's rare examples, I don't know, Hillesang, almost everyone plays a bit different in the LEC official game on stage than they do in the scrim. Like most people play a bit tighter and a bit more conservative and they don't go as crazy, right?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I wouldn't say difference is that big usually, but there's definitely still a difference.
When you were in this Schalke team, people might remember that the first split was the one where it was like, all right. But then the team got actually really good. And suddenly they're like basically in like contender status already. And they're actually like, you're in the semi-finals of the LEC and the people thought everything's possible for this squad. Like, what was it like in terms of coming into a team? If you come into an LEC team in your first year, I don't know what expectations you have. Did you think you were going to be a playoff team? Do you think you should have a chance to go to Worlds? What were your thoughts coming into the squad?
We're talking 2019 now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, I never really thought about the fact, like, yeah, like, I'm just new to this league, and it's weird that I'm in the top contenders now or something, because I think at that point it just was kind of natural to me. Like, I went to the German league, I've just been the top team, I went to the Turkish league, we've been at least top 2, and it's just kind of like, okay, like, you work hard, you play your best, and then, like, it all seemed to work out. I never stopped and thought, oh, like, I don't belong here, or anything like that.
Do you think that if we ran it back, the regional, do you think the Schalke team could have made it to Worlds?
I mean, I only have a bad memory of the regional qualifier back then, you know. I think I had a poor performance, like Humanoid was kind of carrying the game. I mean, they 3-0'd us. I think we all kind of fell off as a whole team anyways. I don't know, like, that roster just, I feel like we weren't quite good enough, but I'm not exactly sure why that was.
Okay. What about if I ask you about some of the members of this team then? So obviously one of the players who was a veteran in this team was the top player at Odoamne. Now here's the thing, Abbedagge, because I actually know him as a person and professionally, I can tell people it's not just when he does it on LEC, he's pretty spicy. Like he's a guy where the joke is, like he's told me publicly, he likes to be flamed. He actually likes that environment where people just call each other out if they make a mistake, or you don't wait and, you know, be all polite. Like a bit like in the 100 Thieves, I'm sure they were way more like chilled and sort of like, you know, I think the jungle should be changed. Like, in an Odoamne team, you just say the jungle are fucking into it. Like, what were you doing? Agree for me like that. What was it like to play with them? I feel like it must be a different sort of a clash of personalities with the two of you. Did you get along?
No, us two, I think we got along pretty well. Maybe what I lacked is that I never actually flamed him like he loves being flamed. And I think in 2019 we didn't have many confrontations like in the team, and I feel like that's maybe why we stagnated at some point, like deep into the like Worlds qualifier and stuff.
You think it's good to sometimes have a bit of friction?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I feel like it just in the end it's gonna make you stronger as a team, or like either you fall apart or you get stronger. But if there's problems, you never mention them. You don't talk about things, then you're just gonna stagnate. And these things are like, they're gonna break you from within. They're pretty like toxic. Your team slowly falls apart. You lose trust in the game, and like at that point, it's just too late. You know.
You were also in this team, obviously playing with Upset, right in the time when, for me, Upset was finally coming into like he's supposed to be like a star ADC and people hyping his name. What was it like to play with him?
yeah, I think that it was good to have a bot lane. I think they would like win 80% of the time. They would win their lane and then transfer it to the map. And I think that he was just so dominant back then, and he was also very assertive. So we were for sure a bot lane focused team. Very centered, just playing through bot with Trick and Ignar. And then Upset would, most of the time, he would just take over the game alone, and the rest of the team kind of adapted and just did their job. That's all we had to do back then, you know.
Is he a demanding player when you say he's assertive? Do you have to play his way if he's on your team, do you think?
I think that when I played with him, he had, I don't know if it's the right term, but like, it was like my way or the highway. Like
Sure.
It's just like come bots and gank us and play around us. Or otherwise, like, I mean, I think that was how the game worked back then.
Sure.
And he filled that role very well. So yeah, not much more to say about that, you know.
What about the one player I did also want to ask about is obviously in this team you had the jungler was Trick, which was that Korean player people might remember from G2 before this, who used to win the MVP and obviously won all those titles with G2. I've heard actually, even though he's Korean, he obviously could speak English a lot better than a lot of the other imports. I've actually heard this guy was quite a vocal player and sort of a guy who actually was sort of like a mentor to some of the players. Was it true?
Yeah, he actually came in after Spring Split when we got Trick into the team. He replaced my mentor, and he from the first day he was like, "Okay, Abbe, like come tomorrow morning to the office, and then I'm gonna coach you." And then we went through like Scrim Worlds, and he would kind of give me a very good perspective of like how I should review my own games even, and kind of refine my thought processes on how to improve. And I can definitely like attribute a lot of my improvements to kind of working with Trick, because yeah, he carried over so much experience from his career kind of into our team and then directly into me. And yeah, I can only be grateful for that.
When you first joined the league, I also seem to remember people, because they thought like, oh, he's quiet and then he's not doing as awesome in LEC. They tried to like make all these stereotypes. They tried to make it sound like you were just like the boring mage player in mid lane or whatever. But I always said, like, I looked it up for this interview. If you go back, even in your rookie season, you are playing and getting wins on like Akali, Silas, like LeBlanc if you need to. Like, what do you think? Did you ever get that sense that people thought you were just a mage player or something?
To be honest, I haven't really heard that many comments like that. I think people sometimes are like a seer corky and they like think of me.
Right, sure. Well, I mean, sometimes people think that's a boring meta too, right?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, like people get bored when those two gems are the meta. But I think it's just like these narratives, they can develop it in like 1 month, and they're just based on the past month of seeing that player play, you know.
That'll just be when you played Lysandra or something. It's in people's mind, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
I've always been enjoying the assassins a lot more, like even in my solo queue, like playing so much Zed, and back then when it was actually strong, like Fizz, LeBlanc is one of my most played gems, and yeah, Akali as well.
By the way, just from your perspective, people know like what happened with Forgiven and that the team lost all the games until he got removed and all that. And they've heard some of the other stories and other interviews. But just from your perspective, since you are more of a quiet player, this was only your second year in the league when Forgiven got added. What was it like? Because, I mean, look, I was joking about the Odoamne one. Obviously, he's a totally fine teammate, and his sort of spice is like, the joke is if we did that like Scorefield meter of spice, his is totally reasonable. If this is like the Hot Wings show, everyone could handle the Odoamne one. Not a lot of human beings can handle like Forgiven. He's like the Reaper Ghost Chili Pepper or whatever those insane ones are. Like, was it like that? I've heard he was pretty spicy, mate, when he joined this team. Was it like
for you?
Yeah,
it was definitely hard for some people to digest this spicy pepper that came into the team, and especially into our reviews. You know, he was very passionate, and it's definitely nothing wrong about that. I kind of admire his passion for the game, but the whole roster was just not very good, so there wasn't much to expect from the beginning. And we've had a lot of arguments also between me and Forgiven.
Oh, you actually yourself were arguing with him, right? Because people, I think, would have for the perception it's just him flaming you, you're being quiet. You actually sort of going back at him a bit.
I mean, I think he was. So there was the story, like, all this is kind of blurry, but I think he was flaming every review. One player took the
whip or whatever. I don't know. Yeah, sure.
And he switched around every review, and then at some point, I got fed up and I stood up and I was like, no, like, I'm always doing well in my lane and like you're like doing like shit, so stop talking or something like that.
It's pretty gangster. Okay, pretty Chad.
I took out the guns, and I didn't hold back, and I think it was good for my personal
that's cool
transformation development. Yeah.
Right. Okay. By the way, are you someone where in like VOD reviews, are you much of a vocal player back then? Would you have your own ideas? Do you much listen to the others? What were you like in the Schalke team?
I think I started getting way more vocal in mid 2020 and 2019. There were so many veterans that I also thought that it's better to kind of just absorb everything they're saying and learn something for myself and collect all the experience. And then 2020, it was kind of more like not really veteran players, and I felt like I had to take more of a leadership role and also be vocal and say like how I imagine us playing the game or how I want us to play. And that's when I started being more like, okay, let's play this way, like let's follow my lead and all those kind of things.
Right, when that famous Schalke miracle run happened, when the team had to win the 7 games in a row and also have like other results go the right way, a lot of people might remember the meme at the time, because he'd obviously been like kind of memed on as a player, was Gilius, because Gilius was having like pop-off leads in games or whatever. But I also remember like, dude, you were carrying like most of these games for mid. Like it seemed like you were in mega form individually. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think that all the pressure was just off us. We were like, okay, like this is so pointless. We're 0-8. So we just said, okay, no regrets. Like, let's just give everything we've got. And I think that I'm not really sure what contributed to my personal, like, going from kind of doing nothing to actually starting to carry these games. But we had a good team environment. I mean, to be honest, I think it might have been Gilius just saying like, okay, like it's still possible to make playoffs. Like everyone, let's fucking do this, like Gilius is as a person. And he was kind of the motivation boost that we needed to just keep tryharding in even outside of scrims, like spam your solo queue games and do as much as possible. And it's just clicked at some point and we did really well.
I always feel like people remember the miracle run in this summer, but they always forget the split after, which is the one that obviously in some part probably got you your job in 100 Thieves. The spring split of the next year, if people don't remember, was the one where the team in the playoffs almost beat the fucking G2 team with Reckless that everyone thought was the best team at the time, and actually was like looking pretty good again. Like I thought you and Gilius again had great performances. What did you think of this split?
Yeah, that was spring 2021. I mean, we had a pretty cool roster with BB coming in over from TSM and Neon and Limit, which kind of, Limit was more like Gilius said, okay, I think this guy is really talented when I played with him.
Right.
So we're going to take him over from SK. And yeah, that split was so competitive in the LEC because there was all these new teams like Rogue and Mad Lions that were also now kind of establishing their positions in the top, and then Fnatic kind of dropping down, and everyone's still thinking G2 is the best. So there was like everyone considered them top teams, but they didn't really think of Schalke as a top team yet. So it was kind of just our chance to prove now that we belong there as well.
Because I've often wondered, I don't know what you think. Look, for obvious reasons, I'm sure you're glad you did do the 100 Thieves move. But I actually think that lineup, when you go back and look at it, if you know the context of that particular time, like it's like a sleeper lineup. Like all those players are just really good at this point in time, actually. Like I feel like if that team would have stayed together, if you didn't go to 100 Thieves, this team could have had a chance to go to Worlds maybe, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely. And that was part of my equation, like, because I really wanted to make Worlds, but I was thinking whether it's more likely in NA or EU, and at the times there were so many more strong teams in EU than there was in NA, and then that was kind of like, okay, I think I really want to qualify for Worlds, and it's really sad to leave all these players behind because we've already grown pretty close, and I don't know, we were just kind of like this unit, like because it was between me, BB, and Gilius. We were like the kind of like the German bros, and then we also were still friends with Neon and Limit. And it was definitely a tough decision to make that choice and go over to 100 Thieves.
When you left this team, obviously that was the end of the time you were coached by Dylan Falco, and you've been coached by him for like your whole LEC career at this point in time. Nowadays, obviously everyone knows him in G2, and he's won all these championships. He obviously had the time of Fnatic before that. This was kind of the period for me where he like re-established himself. Who was he as a coach? What was he like to work with?
Yeah, Dylan was pretty jungle focused. Like, I think he would work mostly with the jungler and kind of establish how he should path and play around the lanes. Then in reviews, he had a really good idea of how we should draft, basically, to make our team win. He would kind of just analyze, okay, like this, I know this player, like he plays these gems well and he sucks at these, so I'm gonna try to manipulate the draft so we get all the gems that we are good at. Because sometimes like ego gets between the player and these gems, and they're like, no, I'm so good at this, and then Dylan is
he's trying to like bait them in on the other side on the draft, right, to pick the champ he wants them to, something like that, right?
He was very good at choosing the words correctly,
right?
It's the mastermind,
right?
But at the same time, I feel like it's not as accurate because my memory is not that good anymore with like working with Dylan. But I just know that he was always working close with Gilius, and yeah, that's where when Gilius started popping off, that was when they had a lot of like kind of closed meetings where they were just one-on-one, probably talking about jungle. And yeah, I mean, then we were all pretty satisfied with how he had a good structure, basically a good structure to the team, because all teams do one of the most important things, like drafts, differently. Because some teams will they're like, okay, draft meeting, everyone sit on the couch for 2 or 3 hours, and we have this TV screen with all these possible like Excel tabs and stuff, where you like go through all these scenarios. But then at the end, everyone's just like headache. And Dylan had a better structure to that. I don't know if I should get into that, but he was like just good at organizing and
right. He had his own approach to make it not have to be like so full on like that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What about when you went to this 100 Thieves move, did you actually feel like a lot of pressure and expectations? Like, I don't know if you know this, but from the outside to me, if someone comes along from like, that's a pretty big org if people don't know in esports in North America, like they're a big org, a lot of money and famous. If they come along and they sign a European player to come in, like that looked, if you look at the rest of the squad, like they're signing you to win the championship, basically. They're gambling that you're going to take them to Worlds. So did you have that expectation? Did you feel like there was pressure like that?
I mean, to be honest, I took it pretty chill. I was like, okay, like I've already know some of the players there. They're like my past friends from other teams, and I don't know. Like I think that this whole experience was just like an adventure of like, okay, I'm going to America. I'm going to America, family. Say your goodbyes, and I'm going to Hollywood. It's like it's all a bit crazy. Like
sure.
I didn't really never thought about like, hey, if I don't succeed, then that basically was a fail for 100 Thieves. Just kind of took it as it goes. I did my best and we won. But I guess it helps me that I don't like overthink these things.
Right, obviously the funny thing is, when you got there, the jungler you have is someone who's from the fucking TCL, it's just closer, like from back in the day, right? Did you actually have did you have a pre-existing relationship with this guy? Did you know him?
Yeah, I mean, of course. Like we played that one split with BB, Closer, and Freeze actually, who in the TCL. And
Were
then
you
Freeze
actually
was
like
also,
friends? Do you think though? Like, was there like a connection already when you went back again?
like he was better friends with BB,
Right.
obviously, because they're like Turkish and they're the
Sure.
bros, and like I was more shy back then, so maybe wouldn't open up as much. But then, kind of as we came back together in a different time zone, I think we connected way better than I thought, and we just became really good friends over that short period of time. Because also I didn't know anything about like how it is to live there and kind of like
Sure.
everything, and then he kind of took me under his wing because he had stayed in the NA for 1.5 years, and he was just like my closest contact at that time.
How would you say, what does Closer need from a team to be at his best? Because I feel like when he's at his peak level, people have seen he's had insane games, but it also seems like he's had up and downs in his career. So what do you think, how does a team need to play so that Closer can pop off?
It's I wouldn't say it's that much about play. It's more about the team environment. It's more
Okay.
He's kind of like, okay, he's like, he wants to go in with his brother in arms, and like he also needs to be friends outside of the game and kind of already have that trust built up. I think he definitely just thrives with like really enjoying the moments, playing with your friends instead of like being some kind of whack job where you're like there's so much pressure on you. Just he likes to enjoy and like go for crazy plays and just like power of friendship. That's kind of how I see it. Because that roster with FBI, like Closer and FBI were really close friends. FBI and Huhi were like also very close, kind of as a botlane duo. And it just kind of worked so well because I felt like the reason why we won that split is that every other LCS teams, they just behind the scenes they hated each other, but we were we were all vibing. We were like really good with each other.
I'm sure people remember from this final, like when he was popping off, he was fucking looking sick. He was looking really, really awesome. What would you say? What type of jungler is he?
I mean, and you would definitely like put him into the stereotype of like a carry jungler. Like he doesn't like to play the, I guess maybe Xmiffy is like a good counterpart because people would maybe call him like, okay, he was always the utility and tank guy.
Right, yes.
And then Closer is the total opposite. He like go for these mechanical outplays on Lee Sin and Viego. And yeah, he will do the carrying job.
One of the players who in your team, it's funny because of his reputation from way back when he was himself a mid laner in CLG. I feel like people never paid much attention to Huhi, who's the support in this team. But actually, I've heard from behind the scenes that he's actually quite a surprising player. I've heard like he's got a really good like mind for the game. And if I look at this lineup, I imagine was he one of the more vocal players or something? What was it like to play with this guy?
Yeah, so Huhi was definitely one of the more vocal guys on the team, and I feel like him and FBI always figured out a lot of just kind of bot lane stuff, and at the time they were the best bot lane in the LCS, and I think Huhi had a great game sense overall of like how people should play their roles, even individual roles if it's not just him, but he was able to like direct, for example, me to, hey, like if you play a certain way like this, then I can kind of impact your lane way better or in the team fight. And he just like people don't really maybe give him that much credit, but he was a big part of that success.
How would you describe the moment when you win the LCS championship and you've won a title? What's it like?
I think I couldn't really believe it at first. It was just like when I moved to America, I was just with the hopes of qualifying for Worlds. And now there I was I've won the whole league, even though I never really planned to. And yeah, I'm here with like a great team environment. They're all my friends, and it just felt so great. Also giving back to the org, because
Oh, sure.
there was just like joining 100 Thieves was a really different experience, because they're like a huge org, and they didn't save a penny just to give us as a team like everything
Right.
we needed in order to succeed. And yeah, paying back Natured as the owner of 100 Thieves, and Courage, who was also like a huge fan of the league team. That was also a great feeling.
What about, obviously, you said earlier that one of the people you looked up to was Bjergsen. You basically did the Bjergsen, mate. You're a European player who went to America and won the LCS. It's kind of cool, right? You followed in his footsteps in a way.
Yeah, I didn't think about it that way, but yeah, you're right.
When you actually won this title, people remember a famous clip, which is, it's funny because obviously the American audience probably didn't know you that well, but when you won, you famously did that like spicy clip where you like wrecked Core JJ for trash talking you and said fuck famously, which, by the way, still one of my favourite reactions ever from Latigras, because you can tell she didn't expect that at all, man. You threw her off completely when he said that, because I saw the way she was like, whoa, whoa, like when you said that, because she wasn't expecting you to swear. But I will say, it's actually, if people don't know, it's sort of an unwritten rule in esports broadcasts. It's okay to do like sort of one F-bomb if it's like that. If it's a really big moment, like for example, I'll give you an example. If G2 had won Worlds, they would have let like Medic or someone like, holy fuck, they've done it, because it's just such a crazy moment. Like you're sort of allowed to have one, as it were. But I feel like when you did this though, it actually sort of like started to turn this rep about that you're just a shy, quiet guy around. So it made it seem like you're sort of like almost like a fucking MMA player or fighter or something, mate. Like when in this moment, was that really just like, did it just come off the top of your head to just say that?
I mean, I didn't really consider anything. I didn't think about that. It's actually like, it's not really a thing you do in American
Okay.
like TV, because I think that here in Germany, like you can kind of you can swear on
Right,
TV or whatever.
okay.
It's like it's not really a problem, but then there it's kind of a big thing. And I mean, I was full of emotions and
Sure.
adrenaline, so like I was just gonna say what's on my mind, you know. And
Also, yeah, go on.
yeah, like TL, I think.
I mean, they thought they were going to win, right? Everyone thought they were supposed to be the favourite and they were supposed to win. So I imagine Core JJ probably didn't think he was going to beat you, right?
Yeah, but a lot of them were like trash talking on Twitter,
okay.
or like tweeting and stuff. So it was just okay, like salt in the wound.
When you came, right, obviously people will know the famous thing about this 100 Thieves team is it made 3 straight finals. In these splits, it was going final, right? In the next one was the one where obviously you famously played the Evil Geniuses team with Jojo and Danny, and the one that was coached by Peter Dunn. I think if people go back and look at that team, I actually think it is a pretty good fucking team, mate. Like, not just in the LCS. People will see it wasn't even that bad at Worlds and MSI. Like, it had games where it was able to compete. Bear in mind, some of these players are rookies. What was the Evil Geniuses team like to play? What was tricky about it?
I mean, yeah, good question. I think that we just totally underestimated them. Like, we saw the day before, because we were just waiting for whoever wins between TL and EG. We saw that Danny was like wrecking everything with Jinx, and then we we tried to leave it up. We lost, and I think they had such momentum that like we couldn't even keep up with it. Like they just had such a good weekend, where just everything clicked between them. And even though we were not bad, we were just not on the same level as them. I think even that whole spring split, it was very wacky. Like I think we had to reverse sweep TL to even make it to that spot, because we were 0-2 down, and yeah, like we were definitely looking rough as a team. And yeah, like EG just kind of swept through the league in spring, right?
What about when you played them? Obviously, when you were facing this team this year, the mid laner was Jojopyun. But if people don't know, like This is the year when he basically started to become like more of a pop-off player and get cocky and stuff. Like this is it wasn't as good also, by the way, as he was last year. He got even better last year, but he was still pretty good. Like, what was he like as actual mid laner? Because I've heard these stories from his teammates and his coaches, mate. It's actually true. Apparently, he barely had played League, and for real, there's like spells he didn't know and like interactions in the game. What was he actually like as a player? Is he like a natural talent? Do you think?
Oh yeah, he was a breath of fresh air because he came out and he was really aggressive in scrims. Always tried to solo kill you, and at that point I wasn't used to it anymore because I think all the NA mids at that point were
people always say they sort of like handshake mid a bit, right? If you're playing, they don't like trying to contest every creep and stuff, right?
Yeah, it was a bit of a handshake,
right?
Before Jojopyun joined, and then he was very aggressive. He wasn't always like very smart about it, but at least he was like very strong mechanically, and yeah, he was really good at laning, so kind of required everyone in the league to step up, and I think it was very good for the league back then. And yeah, he was able to go par with every mid back then, and I mean the rest of the roster was also very strong. With like obviously you got Impact and Vulcan, and then Danny as he's a rookie, but he's still like ADC isn't that hard if you just need your Okay, it is very hard, but like you can be a rookie as long as you're quick and you got the reactions, then you can pop off with a good team around you.
What was it like? Because this year you got to do it in both splits. What was it like to play Bjergsen in the playoffs and win? That's got to be pretty cool.
I mean, yeah. I was so excited when I saw that he stepped down as a coach and returned to Flare on Team Liquid. But I just felt like I was kind of missing like that he would like really pop off and be like, because people remember him as like the strongest mid laner of NA.
Sure.
But
was he a bit different when he came back, you think?
At that point, I just felt like he wasn't like a top mid laner really. He was top 4 or top 5 or something, but it wasn't as challenging as, for example, like playing against Jojopyun, who would like it just felt like you're playing versus something outdated kind of when you played against Bjergsen. Even though he was still playing Zillion and kind of playing more of a utility role maybe for Team Liquid. Back then he was just like, Bjergsen was like I'm gonna solo kill like almost everyone on like assassins and stuff. Like your Fizz and Zed comes to mind.
Sure.
And yeah. It was still like very exciting to like kind of get to play against him, because I thought, okay, he's a coach now. I'm never gonna play against the guy that I looked up to before when I started coming up as a player. Yeah, it was a good experience.
By the way, just because we're off in the chronology a bit, I'll ask a bit about the Worlds before that. I forgot about, obviously, when you won LCS, you went to Worlds that year. That was the year where, if people forget, the actual group, now in hindsight, looks way worse. Like, obviously, you had EDG who actually won this Worlds, and then the other team was fucking T1, which got to the semis and went 5 games down one. Like, when you look back now, it's a pretty hard group. Like, what was this group like? Like, was there a sense in the team, like, there's a chance to make it out? Maybe we can get lucky. Was there anything like that? Was it intimidating?
I mean, it was intimidating for sure. We didn't have any luck that Worlds, because Closer wasn't able to get a visa. So we were all out to boot camp in Europe, but we didn't have Closer with us. So we were all just like playing solo queue and kind of waiting until we get to travel to Iceland.
Right.
And then once we are in Iceland, we are now the full team. But now we've got all these Asian teams that have already scrimmed for like 3 weeks or something with the meta that they kind of they develop a meta. We just play solo queue and kind of try to figure out what champs are strong, but we just got absolutely demolished the first 2 weeks, like whenever we faced an Asian team. So it's like at that point it's even hard to like still remember how you can win games, because you've just been losing. So it took a while to just realize, okay, like we have to go back to our fundamentals and kind of play what we can do best. That's how you can actually still find success. Like, we managed to win one game versus EDG, that group, but I mean, they were still massively ahead of us, D1 and EDG.
That's still had to be cool, though. If people don't know, you gave them the fucking ryze, which is one of your signature champs, right? It's pretty cool to, like, I mean, you didn't know they were going to win Worlds yet, but now that they have, it looks pretty dope to have won that one game.
Yeah, I can pat myself on the back and say, yeah, I beat the world champions.
Yeah, there you go. I've had to make a lot of tough choices in my career, but thanks to the support of my Patreon community, the Skrilluminati, I never have to make tough financial decisions. So this video and all the rest on my channel are kindly supported by Abbedagge, Frisky, Mac Pugnaccio Racula, Animosity, Jensen Go, Tobias Bernasconi, Tosh, Toucan, and you know it if you've ever heard before, and you'll hear it many times in the future. A special thanks goes out to my main man, Journey Keys Minion. Do you want to ask a question in my video AMA? Do you want to be part of one of those long discussions where we talk about whatever you like in esports? Do you want teasers, find out who the upcoming guests are going to be? Or maybe you want to suggest a topic for a future Thorin's Thoughts type video? Well, if any of these perks or others appeal to you, put your money where your mouth is today and join the Skrilluminati by joining the Patreon link in the description box below.